to us. So for me, the way to grow a business is, I think too many entrepreneurs want to grow a perfect business. I don't. I have this saying that I share with our members all the time. Your business is broken, and if things go well, it always will be. Because a business that has no problems is a business that is out of business. Reality, that's just how it is. 100% of businesses have challenges and problems. And so for me, it's about building a business that's adaptable, that can overcome market conditions, that can do what it needs to do. And while not one business that I've ever run have I run it perfectly, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at creating more coherent and congruent teams, getting out of the way more, letting people take responsibility more. And thankfully, at the time where we had that huge growth, we had an executive team that included my wife, Katie, and I. So there was the two of us and 3 other people. So the 5-person team was able to take care of it. Not perfectly and with a ton of challenges, but we were able to get through it and continue growing.
Wow. So what are some of the pieces, like, for the not perfect businesses, which makes perfect sense too? It's almost like this, there's a friend, Angelo Cisco, recently told me, he's like, I'm an 80% kind of guy. I don't try to be perfect. I'm like, and that just impacted me. And I've been living by 80%. And I'm like, yeah, I just feel happier. And I feel like business is probably better too and everything else. But what are the things you would sacrifice, I guess, and maybe that's not the right word, but like, what's the 20% or so that you would say, okay, well, that doesn't have to be perfect to continue on?
Well, it's funny that you use the 80%. So here's how we coach people. So, what our company does today is, well, let me take a step back. What I've always been terrible at in my entire life is process, structure, and routine. And I've always had a hard time getting things done. I've had a hard time like showing up to the same meeting twice and treating it the same way. I've had a hard time getting through the morning like 2 days in a row and getting out of the house at the same time. Like I watch other people do it and I'm like, how do they do that? That's so amazing. They just got ready and they didn't even think about it. I'm like, stuck on the stairs somewhere reading a text message or something, and then I get distracted and I'm on a walk trying to think about it, and then I'm like, oh crap, I've got a morning that I need to go attend to. Right. And so when I was 10 years old, I got my first written morning routine, right? I created my first written morning routine. It was because I was late to school perpetually. And so I didn't even realize I was doing something that was going to help. I was doing something that I thought was going to correct how broken I was. I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't share it with anybody. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I realized, wait a second, now I've built so much process, structure, and routine. This is what everybody else needs. And so for me, when you say, what 20% do you leave out? Here's how we coach our clients, and this is how we run our company today. We show people how to create a strategic plan every 30 days, a simple, lightweight, easy to understand strategic plan. And then you do everything you can to finish 80% or more. Because if you ever get to 100, you should celebrate and go buy everybody's stuff and get really excited about it. But here's what we know now, having worked with entrepreneurs for decades. If you hit a consistent 80% on your strategic plan month after month, you are going to crush your competition, take over, lead your category, and here's the trade-off. If you as an entrepreneur want to hit 100% every month, you're going to be running your team into the ground, overclocking everybody, cortisol, stress, frustration, all that stuff. And so the sooner we get past the perfection thing and we just look at progress instead, that's when we really start to crush it as entrepreneurs.
Oof, that's good stuff, man. And consistency, it keeps you consistent. If you're perfect or trying to be perfect all the time, it's just this undue stress. And like you said, cortisol, that's where people burn out. They have bad things happen to their body, heart attacks, stroke, whatever, all these stress inducing things.
It's funny. I just 15 minutes before I got on with you, the two of you, I was making some notes from a meeting I was just in. And I wrote down a title of a podcast I'm going to record. Not title, a subject. I don't know what the title is going to be, but the subject is going to be is how to have vulnerable conversations so people know what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things when there's stress and when there's challenges and issues going on, most entrepreneurs try and deny all of that. They don't even want to admit it. I'll share something really personal with you guys. So I've been dyslexic my whole life. I didn't know it until I was in my early 30s when I finally saw a therapist who's like, hey, you know what you're describing really sounds like dyslexia. It doesn't sound like you get tired when you're reading. It sounds like you've got something else. And I went and got tested, and of course I had it. Wow. And for me, admitting that to people was one of the hardest things in my entire life. Like saying it out loud was so difficult because I was from this consulting world where you never let them see you sweat. You keep the veneer up, and that's more important than what's really going on. You know, you don't ever admit weakness. You're always showing up with the answer. You always have to be on. And that's how I lived. So my whole 20s, I lived that way, and it almost killed me. And when I in my 30s, when I remember the day I walked into my team and somebody was like, "Hey, can you read this and tell us what you think?" And I looked at it, and the headline was in script, like cursive. And I said, "I'm dyslexic. I can't read this. You need to tell me what it says. And I think we should change the font so everybody like me can read it." And I remember like having this lump in my throat, like, holy crap, did I just say that out loud? Well, the next day, the designer that we had redesigned everything so it was way easier to read. Had used fonts. He looked it up and said, like, what fonts are better for people with dyslexia? Well, here's what's ironic. They're actually better for everybody.
Yeah.
And so we started designing everything so that I could read it and so that I could use it. And it actually improved the business. But what was more important was people now understood that, like, if every once in a while, if I was reading something and I was slow, or if I wasn't like on it, or if they handed me something in an event and I was in front of a big group of people, they're not saying, "Hey, Alex, read this," and it's in handwriting that I can't read. Oh. And so by coming clean on that and telling people what was really going on, I get a tremendous amount of support. You know, for some reason, the type of dyslexia that I have makes calendars like, dude, calendars are like kryptonite to me. When I
do they just like blend everything together?
It's the worst. I was just explaining it to Brooke, who's somebody who's onboarding in our company right now, and she's helping with my calendar. I was explaining it to her this morning. I said, "Brooke, you know, when you pull up the calendar and when we pull it up and we're talking about it, I want you to know, as I look at it, the blocks are moving around and it doesn't really feel right. And I can't really focus on it. And the more focus I put on it, like, I can't really understand, you know, I have to like print out a calendar and do it on paper and then go compare it to the screen to understand what's going on." And I would have never admitted that 15 or 20 years ago. Right. And I said that, and Brooke's like, "Well, I'm really good at calendars and I can't speak like you do, so we're a good team." And like, you know, it's so funny. We have this fear of being vulnerable, like, "Oh, I can't tell people what's really going on with me." And if you do, it becomes a non-issue. It makes you more human and you actually get the help you need.
Doesn't it feel like everything else in life just kind of momentum, like everything speeds up a little bit easier? There's less, there's more flow if you just kind of put something out there that you feel like like for some reason, not that you shouldn't, but you just feel like, I'm just uncomfortable. Like, this isn't right. This doesn't feel what other people are doing.
I feel like friction kind of disappears as you have more and more of these vulnerable conversations. I know, like, even just thinking about like conversations I have with my wife, a lot of times there'd be things that I was like, I don't know if I want to approach this conversation. And it was always sort of a struggle. But then after the conversation, life always feels just a little bit easier, a little bit better. And it's the same way in business with like Joe and I. We've been partners for 13 years now. And we've learned that we can literally tell each other anything and nothing's off the table. And it just makes everything feel so much, there's just so much less friction now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first, having a partnership, like I have that type of relationship with my wife where I can tell her anything. And having that type of relationship with just one person on the planet changes who you are as a human being.
That's right.
Because, you know, I always tell people, you know, accepting someone for everything that they are can give them everything and cost you nothing. I mean, it really costs you zero unless you have like opinions and judgments and stuff about people that you can't let go of. You know, for me, like I've dropped all of that crap. It's like, come as you are. I'm good. I don't care who you sleep with and what sexuality you have and what gender identity and all that. Like, if you're human and you can perform and crush it on our team, welcome. Let's do this, right? And so, you know, when you judge others and you have perception of others, you're going to end up with that same judgment and perception yourself. So the more you can let go of it, I agree. It's like friction naturally goes away and momentum just occurs.
Yeah.